February 28th, 2026. The world wakes up to absolutely shocking news. After years of simmering tensions, proxy fights, and really fragile diplomacy, the United States and Israel launched a massive, coordinated military strike against Iran. So, how on earth did a situation that was on the very brink of a historic breakthrough suddenly explode into open war? Let's unpack this. And here's what makes the timing so wild. Less than 24 hours before the first missiles hit, the chief Omani mediator in these talks was incredibly optimistic. He told CBS News that a peace deal wasn't just, a possibility. He said it was within our reach. For one brief, shining moment, it felt like a major crisis had been averted. And then this. Hours later, that hope was just completely shattered by a declaration of war. This incredible contrast, it's the central puzzle here. How did we go from a deal being that close to a full-scale military operation literally overnight? To really get what happened, we need to rewind the clock just a few weeks. The entire region was basically a tinderbox. You had these huge protests happening inside Iran, colliding with some really intense military and diplomatic pressure from the outside. This timeline really tells the story of how quickly things were moving, in both directions. It all kicks off in December 2025, with these massive anti-government protests sweeping across Iran. Then, in January, the U.S. responds. President Trump sends a naval armada to the region, a huge show of force. But then, look at February. Even with all that military pressure, these secret back-channel talks start up in Oman, and by the 27th, they seem to be on the verge of a historic breakthrough. So what was actually in this deal that got everyone so hopeful? Well, it was a complete game changer. It went so far beyond the old 2015 agreement. We're not just talking about pausing their nuclear program, we are talking about a permanent end to all uranium enrichment and getting rid of their existing stockpiles. And on top of that, it reportedly put strict limits on their ballistic missiles and made them promise to stop funding proxy groups around the region. This would have been a fundamental shift in Iran's entire strategic posture. But of course, that deal never happened. Instead, the world got Operation Epic Fury. This was the American code name for a huge, coordinated air and sea campaign designed to, in their words, cripple the Iranian regime. And you can see just how coordinated this was, right in the code names. The U.S. called its part Operation Epic Fury, while Israel's was Operation Roaring Lion. This wasn't some last-minute alliance. No way. This was a deeply integrated military campaign that had clearly been planned for months. The first wave of strikes was just overwhelming. Within minutes, social media was flooded with images of explosions in major cities all across Iran. And the targets were incredibly strategic, aiming right for the heart of the regime. Military command centers, key infrastructure, and even the personal compound of the supreme leader. The objective was clear: a decapitation strike. And there was zero ambiguity about the ultimate goal here. In a video address, President Trump spoke directly to the Iranian people. This wasn't about containment or trying to get back to the negotiating table. The stated goal of the United States was straight-up regime change. Well, Iran's response was swift, it was widespread, and it was devastating. Within hours, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched waves of ballistic missiles, and not just at Israel, but all across the Persian Gulf. And look at this list of targets. Iran wasn't just hitting back at Israel. They went after nearly every single major U.S. military installation in the region. This move dramatically widened the conflict, suddenly turning American allies like the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain into active battlegrounds. The human cost of this war became tragically clear very, very quickly. Amid the chaos of those initial strikes, Iranian state media reported that a girls' elementary school in the city of Minab had been hit, killing over 50 students. And the tragedy wasn't just confined to Iran. The retaliatory strikes had deadly consequences for civilians in neighboring countries, too. In the UAE, falling debris from a missile that was intercepted ended up killing a civilian in a residential area. Okay, and this is where the story takes its most unexpected turn. For decades, Iran has pushed this whole axis of resistance idea, believing the Muslim world would rally to its side. But when its own missiles started falling on Arab soil, the exact opposite happened. What is so remarkable here is who the Gulf states condemned. It wasn't the U.S., it wasn't Israel, it was Iran. Saudi Arabia called Iran's retaliation blatant and cowardly. The UAE called it a dangerous escalation.
For these countries, the immediate, real-world threat of Iranian missiles hitting their territory just instantly overrode everything else. It was a stunning and immediate geopolitical pivot.
And the big takeaway here is that the Chinese brokered diplomatic thaw between Saudi Arabia and Iran, the one that seemed like such a big deal just a few years ago, was effectively killed by those Iranian missiles. A new regional alignment against Tehran had formed almost instantly. And this regional realignment was basically mirrored on the global stage. The conflict immediately fractured the international community, forcing major world powers to pick a side. So on one side, you had key Western allies, the UK, Canada, Australia, all quickly voicing support for the US and Israel. On the other side, you had Russia and China, who fiercely condemned the strikes as a reckless act of aggression. And then, stuck in the middle, were organizations like the UN and the EU, just desperately calling for restraint and an immediate ceasefire, trying to stop an even bigger catastrophe. And so, here we are, left with a war that began just hours after a peace deal seemed possible. A conflict that has shattered the regional order, killed civilians across multiple countries, and completely redrawn the lines of global alliances. With all the old diplomatic frameworks now in ashes, the biggest question isn't just how this war will end, but what new, uncertain world will rise from its aftermath.